Today on the show, we're going to be talking about Billy Kaplan, also known as Wiccan from the Young Avengers. If you didn't know that he's possibly one of the most powerful magic users in the Marvel Universe, then this show is for you. So, Billy Kaplan. He would first appear in Young Avengers #1 in 2005, and I really looked up to this character when I was in school. To get through school on an emotional level, I somewhat emulated Billy, and the reasoning will be very obvious when we get into his history, but because of that, I'm more than slightly defensive over this character. So, Billy was the eldest of 3 sons born to Jeff and Rebecca Kaplan. Billy was bullied a lot in school for being gay, and I mean physically attacked for being gay. And one day, he would run into the Avenger, Scarlet Witch, who would tell him to stand his ground, and she would touch him, and a flash of red light would appear, and this would heal all of his wounds. A few weeks later, Billy would stand up for another kid who was being bullied, and this is when his magic abilities would manifest for the first time, and he would almost kill the bully. Eventually, the Young Avengers would be formed and Billy would join them, under the codename Asgardian, but over time it would change to Wiccan. This was due to the fact that his powers were magic as opposed to natural Asgardian gifts. To begin with, Billy could only fly and generate lightning, but over time he would learn how to cast spells found in self-help books. By this, I mean Billy focuses on an outcome he wants to happen, and he says it like, "Pie appear," and the universe will change reality, and that thing will happen. So if he said pie appear and really focused, a pie would appear. I'm not really sure where else to put this, but right from the beginning, it is heavily implied that Billy and Scarlet Witch are heavily linked to one another. And this is really Billy's main story arc. The truth is that way back when, Scarlet Witch really wanted children, so she used her powers to create herself twins, but she didn't realize that she created these twins using soul fragments of the demon Mephisto. Eventually, Mephisto would reclaim the soul fragments for himself, and this would destroy the twins, but the twins would be reincarnated into Billy and Speed. When the Marvel Civil War happened, Billy and the Young Avengers would be arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D., but they would be saved by Captain America, and Billy would teleport the Young Avengers to the Resistance base of operations. The Young Avengers would then teleport to the Runaways, and there was a huge misunderstanding. The two teams would end up fighting, but then Nova would turn up and capture Billy, Hulkling, and Carolina. Hulkling would then be experimented on by the Warden, but then Zavin would turn up and rescue everyone, and Zavin almost kills the Warden, but Hulkling stops him. Wiccan and the rest of the Young Avengers are actually part of the first major battle of the Civil War, and he would be quickly shot with a tranquilizer dart by Tony Stark. There are a lot of fan-favorite characters that did a lot of really messed up things in the Civil War, and I haven't forgiven a number of them, and this is a prime example of why I still have not forgiven Tony Stark. Tony knew that Wiccan could teleport, so if the battle was looking bad for the Resistance, Wiccan could just teleport everyone out of there. So he shot him with a tranquilizer dart, and this angered Captain America to see someone that was so young, because Wiccan is a teenager, and he is being treated like he's some form of wild elephant being poached. Most of the anti-registration group would make it out of the battle unscathed, but Wiccan would be captured by the registration group. However, due to a team-up of Hulkling and Captain America, the anti-registration group was able to infiltrate the registration HQ and save Billy and all the other prisoners. Following the Civil War, Billy and Speed look for Scarlet Witch, and they would eventually run into Master Pandemonium, who recognizes Wiccan's magic as the same as Scarlet Witch's and knows exactly who they are. He explains to them their origin as Scarlet Witch's children, but tells them they should just accept who they are now, and if they are happy, they shouldn't be chasing their past life. And Wiccan agrees with this and calls off the search. For me, this was a really powerful thing to read in school, to see a homosexual character who just doesn't care, who just is happy with themselves, even though they're being judged for being a hero and they're being judged for being gay. They just don't care. And that made me really happy to read. Eventually, Doctor Strange would come to Wiccan and tell him that he was one of the people in line to become the next Sorcerer Supreme. Keeping in mind that a number of people in the Marvel Universe are actually in line to become the next Sorcerer Supreme. I mean, it could have been Pixie, it could have been Magic, it could have been Scarlet Witch, it could have been anyone. Hood would then turn up, and Hood and Doctor Strange would take part in magical battle, and Wiccan would actually help Strange out against Strange's wishes, and then Wiccan and Strange would teleport to the new Avengers to get some help. In the Siege of Asgard, Wiccan is actually one of the heroes that answered Captain America's call to try and overthrow Norman Osborn's regime, and Wiccan loves Asgardian mythology, so of course he's going to defend Asgard. Wiccan and Hulkling would fight side by side against the Wrecking Crew, but during the battle, Wiccan would lose control of his powers, and he would produce lightning bolts like they were nothing, and this actually really worried Hulkling. One day, when the Young Avengers were fighting the Sons of Serpent, Wiccan would lose control of his powers, and he would put all of the terrorists into a comatose state, and then the Avengers would turn up and say that Wiccan has to go with them. Turns out that Wiccan is a lot more like Scarlet Witch than the Avengers realized, meaning that they are worried that if Wiccan loses control of his powers, he could cause mass devastation. The Young Avengers break Wiccan out, and they all go to try and find Scarlet Witch. They believe that if they can show Scarlet Witch that her twins are alive and well, she might be cured of her insanity. And then Magneto comes along and explains that he is actually Wiccan and Speed's grandfather. The Avengers then turn up and a huge battle breaks out, and Carol Danvers says to Wiccan that he cannot win this battle, and Wiccan is like, you know what, you're right, and teleports the Young Avengers and Magneto to Wundagore Mountain, the place where Scarlet Witch was born. Patriot is really angry at Wiccan for doing this, but then Hawkeye turns around and is all like, calm your tits, he's telling the truth. Wiccan uses his magic to try and locate Scarlet Witch, but then Quicksilver turns up and captures Wiccan, and Speed gives chase, and the two of them have this awesome race, and Wiccan is just being carried by Quicksilver the whole time. A whole mess of things would happen, but at the end of this mess, it is revealed that Doctor Doom actually has Scarlet Witch in captivity. The whole group is debating whether they want to go to Doctor Doom's castle and rescue Scarlet Witch or not, but then Wiccan sneaks off and begins to cast a spell to take himself to Scarlet Witch, but then Quicksilver turns up and interrupts the spell and begins to point out how he and Wiccan are very similar. Meanwhile, back with the adult Avengers, they meet with Wonder Man because they want to use him to try and find Wiccan and Scarlet Witch and possibly kill the two of them off. Later that night, Wiccan writes a love letter to Hulkling, sneaks away and teleports to Doctor Doom's castle, disguises himself as Scarlet Witch and sneaks inside. And inside, he is attacked by Scarlet Witch herself, who has amnesia. It turns out that Scarlet Witch, in this amnesiac state, is due to marry Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom would then turn up and attack Wiccan himself. Wiccan attempts to tell Wanda about her past life as Scarlet Witch, but Doctor Doom knocks him out before he can finish. And then Doctor Doom explains to Wiccan that somehow, over time, he and Scarlet Witch really did fall in love, and they are actually marrying out of love. However, later that night, Wanda goes to Wiccan to learn all about the Scarlet Witch before she is due to be married. Meanwhile, back with the Young Avengers, they are debating how they should best infiltrate Doctor Doom's castle to save Wiccan, but then Wonder Man turns up to try and stop them, but then the Avengers turn up, and this whole great big battle breaks out. During the battle, Wolverine sneaks off to try and find Wanda and Wiccan and kill them off, but then Iron Lad is able to stop Wolverine. Wanda then recovers her memories and her powers, so Wanda and Wiccan use their magic to determine whether they really are mother and son. And the answer is yes. Yes, they are. Wanda asks for Billy's forgiveness, and the two cry and hug it out and are very, very happy, and then Wanda resolves to undo all the damage that she's done. After this, the X-Men would come on the scene, and the whole situation with the battle would get even worse, and then Doctor Doom would absorb Wanda's reality warping powers, but then Wanda would be able to get them back, and a whole mess of things would happen, and it wouldn't be a pretty situation. The main things that you need to take note of is that after this battle, Cassie would die, Wanda would go off to try and find herself, and the Young Avengers would disband. After this, Wiccan falls into a very deep depression. He feels like this whole thing was his fault. but then Hulkling would propose to him and the two would share a kiss. The two of them get back into their superhero uniforms with Hawkeye and Speed, and Captain America makes all of them full-fledged Avengers. Usually I find that Avengers comics are very surface level. You really get what you have on the pages. And I don't really mind that, it's just not my favourite way to tell a story. But the Young Avengers is very character driven, and I love that. The Young Avengers is really about statements, emotions, relationships, and Wiccan is definitely the character that I relate to the most. I would love to write Wiccan one day, mostly because it will be really hard, because it would be like writing myself. I guess you could say I'm like Wiccan meets Tim Drake meets Harley Quinn's hair. Wiccan is definitely a character that I relate to more than any other character from any other comic book, which is insane, but it makes me happy that there is a character like that. It's super effective! Okay guys, that is it for today. If you think I forgot anything about Wiccan, please let me know in the comments down below, and also don't forget to thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more history, and also don't forget to check out my Kickstarter, check out my gaming channel, like me on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter. My name is Faust, this has been Exploring Comics, and it is super effective.